Can the Falcons offensive line pass another test and keep Chris Jones in check?
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to another illustrious episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day. And this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code in all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. So, guys, if you don't know me, I'm your very humble host, Aaron Freeman, a.k.a. Mr. Drew, a.k.a. Sirius Black, a.k.a. Mr. a.k.a. And I've been covering the Atlanta Falcons for a very long time, formerly at FalcFans.com, RIP. Still going strong on this illustrious podcast. And I thank each and every one of you that goes strong with me as an everydayer. That means you make it your first listen or first watch each and every day. And then become an everydayer. All you have to do is subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. So today's episode, I am joined by none other than Jarvis Davis, the illustrious host of the Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast family, covering all of Atlanta and Georgia sports every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today we are wrapping up the week, previewing this week 3 Sunday night showdown between the Atlanta Falcons and Kansas City Chiefs. You know, Jarvis and I are going to get together. We're going to talk a lot about trenches. We're also going to talk about some secondary players, maybe a linebacker or two, given that Jarvis and I have this understated, I guess the word, Cold War, between who should be the starting linebacker next to Caden Ellis. So we'll get into that on today's episode, given a certain linebacker's performance on Monday Night Football. But let's start off the conversation, Jarvis, talking about the big challenge for the Falcons in the trenches this week with Kansas City Chiefs defensive tackle Chris Jones. All summer long, I've been talking about the challenges that the Falcons offensive line would face specifically in these first 3 games going up against these very good defensive lines. They did not pass that test in week 1 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. They passed the test absolutely in week 2 against the Philadelphia Eagles. And today we'll talk about whether we feel good about their ability to pass this test in week 3 going up against the Kansas City Chiefs with a defensive line headlined by Chris Jones. And Jarvis, I looked at the stats today because I was talking with Chris Clark of Locked On Chiefs yesterday and talking about how Chris Jones just seems to line up everywhere on the defensive line. And, Chris was saying like, he tends to line up in certain spots and all the different things that Chris Jones can do, who, is one of the best defensive players in the NFL and probably would get more accolades if not for the existence of a certain guy on my wall, Aaron Donald, over the last decade as, the sort of second figure. He's the Batman to his Superman, I guess you could say, when it comes to that, and doesn't get enough credit. But I looked up the numbers to see where exactly Chris Jones is lined up this year. At left defensive end, he lines up about 40% of the time. That's actually the most he's going to line up. And so if that follows, that means Caleb McGarry is going to be the guy under fire going up against Chris Jones. Right defensive end, he's played a lot more this year than he normally does, going up against the left tackle. You probably saw that against Ronnie Stanley and others the last couple of weeks. So Jake Matthews, hey, you're going to have to do some work. And he's actually not spending nearly as much time playing on the interior as he has done in previous years. Left tackle, 17% of the time, right tackle, 19% of the time. Last year, that was closer to, 25 and 25 for him there. So pretty much he's going to move up and down the line, and that presents its own challenges because you can't necessarily really come up with a plan for him because you don't know on any given down where he's going to line up. But I'm curious, Jarvis, what are your thoughts on sort of the battle with Chris Jones as well as some of the other playmakers that Chiefs have up front?
It's going to be a big one because when you think about him lining up on the edge, a lot of times you don't have to worry about 2 offensive linemen being able to put their hands on you, right? Like, of course, you got to deal. There's a difference, thing that you have to be able to worry about with backs chipping and tight ends chipping and all that stuff. That's all well and good, but it's the difference between a 215-pound running back coming to chip me versus a 315, 320-pound guy kind of double team slip me up to the next level, and more than likely they're going to stay with me because they will prefer, the running back going one-on-one, that linebacker in the hole versus him being able to beat that one-on-one blocking because you left too early on that double team. So I feel like I'm not surprised at all that he's lined up on the edge. And then when you gave me the percentage of where he lines up the most, that left defensive end, a lot of times the really good ones, they line up on that side because ideally that's your worst tackle, because your left tackle is the guy who get paid the most amount of money. So, and here we are again with another matchup that isn't going to work out in Caleb McGarry's favor if they don't plan for it, right? So I think that this week for the Falcons, they have to establish the running game again, because there is a thing that I feel that, based off the tape that they put out last week, their teams are going to start saying, oh, so y'all do want to run the football. That is who you are. So now they know that you're going to run the football. I want to see what that looks like now, because we understand that I talked about this on the Atlanta Sports Party earlier today. And the one thing that I pointed out was the fact that, they made Cousins feel comfortable. Can you make Kirk Cousins feel comfortable in moments? Because he's not going to be comfortable for the entire game, because that's just how guys like Chris Jones work. Like, you're not going to be able to shut him down the entire game, and you're not going to wonder where 95 is, through 4 quarters. That's not going to happen. So I feel like as long as they can get to a point, just like we talked about with TJ Watt, if they don't let him wreck the game, he can make plays, but don't let him wreck the game, I feel like they'll be in a good spot. And I feel like Caleb McGarry has the opportunity to say, I understand who I'm going up against. I understand that, teams might point me out, hey man, if you want to get home, line up on this side. 70 going to give you the same thing each and every time, but you don't know what you're going to get from Caleb McGarry. So 76 is where you need to line up at. So don't be that guy this week. And I feel like the Falcons should be okay.
Yeah, I definitely think it's definitely going to be a challenge. And when Chris Jones is not lining up over you still got to deal with George Karlaftis. That's the side of the line that he lines up on. He's got a relentless motor. And so it's going to be a challenge for the Falcons up front. And as you said, I think the key is going to be keeping Kirk comfortable, as they did last week on Monday Night Football. Outside of a couple of Jalen Carter pressures, there really wasn't a whole lot there that Philadelphia was able to disrupt. But no disrespect to the Eagles, but I think it's going to be a different challenge dealing with Chris Jones, just because he's really good at football. This may be the best D lineman that the Falcons face all year long, like even better than TJ Watt, Max Crosby, Micah Parsons. Like, he might be it. Basically, it's like, to me, when Chris Jones gives a damn, like there's really nothing that you can do to really stop him,
Yeah, and that's the thing, man. When it comes to Chris Jones, like you talking about earlier with Aaron Donald, like, if Aaron Donald is the only person keeping you from being considered one of the best interior defense linemen in the NFL, like, yeah, man, that's okay. I'll be okay with that. We talk about
Silver medal.
Right. We're not talking about a first ballot Hall of Famer with Aaron Donald. We're talking about a no ballot, meaning don't vote, just put them in. You know what I'm saying? Don't have a discussion. That should be the shortest discussion. And this is not just hyperbole, because Aaron Donald, man, I watched Warren Sapp in his prime, and Warren Sapp wasn't that, man. Warren Sapp was a terror. Trust me. I understand. Get it. But, man, Aaron Donald was a different type of dude. And then when we talking about, as Aaron Donald, his career wind down, which is weird to say because dude was just freaking ridiculous for every year of his career, you start to put 95 in that conversation. So, like, yeah, this dude is the best interior defensive lineman in the NFL, like, hands down, as soon as Aaron Donald retired. So, yeah, I'm okay with being in that category. But I think, back to just the Falcons offensive line and his matchup, I feel like it's going to have to be by committee, man. Wherever he lines up, know where he is. Because, a lot of times quarterbacks come to the line of scrimmage, they're identifying the Mike linebacker so they can figure out, count how many people on each side so they can know where to slide the protection, if they're passing the football and all that stuff. I think they need to do the same thing in this game. Where's 95? And if he's on the right side of our offensive line, we might need to skew our protection that way. If he's on the left side, we need to skew our protection that way. And then, and I think that with the – can I just talk about the crowd for a little second?
Okay.
Just a little bit. So, don't let the Chiefs come in here and start doing the tomahawk chop, man. Like, can we not do that? Because I specifically remember a time when I was at the game and these doggone Chiefs fans started doing the tomahawk chop. I'm like, what is that? Because I didn't know they did it. Call me with being aloof to it or whatever. And I was just sitting, I was like, what are y'all doing? I'm like, that's our stuff. Like, we do it at Braves games. What are you talking about? Don't let these Chiefs fans come in here and be disrespectful. That's all I'm saying. So, it needs to be, don't let the Kirk Cousins and them have to be on the silent count at the crib. That's disrespectful. So, I spoke my piece on that. So, I won't delve into it, but I just want to put that out there for all the Falcons fans, because we know a lot of Falcons fans listen to this podcast, man. So I want to make sure you guys are informed on what's going on.
There you go. So we will see how the Falcons handle that dilemma that is Chris Jones and George Karlaftis. But the Chiefs' offensive line might have a dilemma of their own, because the Falcons got a guy in Matthew Judon. And, this could be, I think, a big day for him. And we'll break that down with Jarvis Davis as we continue today's Locked On Falcons. Guys, I want to tell you about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And now they have something a little different through this weekend, through September 22nd. All FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. And then with that YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. Check out the line for the Chiefs action against the Falcons, where the Chiefs are favored by 3.5 points. But you want to get that YouTube TV Sunday Ticket, because you'll get the multi-view so that you can watch, 4 different games. You can choose which 4 afternoon games you can watch as you guys get geared up for Sunday night's action. So take advantage of this limited time offer by going to FanDuel.com. FanDuel is America's #1 sport. So, Jarvis, I don't know how much of the Chiefs you've watched these first couple of weeks, but they've had major problems at that left tackle position, right? As much as people want to make of Caleb McGarry, I would recommend, understand that as bad as Caleb McGarry has been at times, I don't think he's been as bad as the Chiefs left tackle has been. And mainly that has been rookie Kingsley Suamataia. And then last week he had a rough game against Trey Hendrickson, which lots of people have rough. I remember Jake Matthews having a very rough game against Trey Hendrickson several years ago, back when he was with the Saints. So that is not something to be ashamed of. Keep your head up, Kingsley, when it comes to that. But he got benched late in the game. They put in Wanye Morris, I think, who's second-year offensive tackle out of Oklahoma, and I don't think he really did much better. And so they have some major question marks. And this feels like this is the type of matchup that Matthew Judon can dominate and really kind of be our version of Chris Jones, of being that guy that can make those game-changing plays. Do you feel like we've seen flashes of Judon? He's had a couple of sacks in the first 2 weeks, but not a whole lot outside of a couple of flashes here or there outside of those plays in terms of, but like this feels like the game that's setting up for Matthew Judon to have his breakout game. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Because here's the thing. I talked about, Judon and Justin Simmons being guys that we can understand the rust being knocked off because they ain't really go through training camp for real. So we're seeing that evolve. Like, the first half of that Steelers game, Judon was a little, you had to kind of look for him. He had the red sleeves or whatever, but you had to kind of look for him as far as for making the plays. Second half, he ended up getting half a sack with Grady Jarrett. And then, this game, against the Eagles on Monday night, you saw, hey, they started running stunts and running those twists, and he was able to get home on Jalen Hurts, the only sack of the game. So I feel like he's just getting warmed up, man. So I feel like with Kingsley Sui, Mata, whatever his name is, I saw some of those struggles. I didn't get a chance to watch the whole game, but I did see how they were able to take advantage of that. So I think that this is a great place to be in. What I'm talking about is a Falcons defensive lineman being a concern for an offensive line. Like, I don't feel we haven't had that conversation hardly at all in the past. Who is specifically an edge guy, right? Yeah. I have to use multiple hands to be able to do that one. But obviously Grady brings something to the table, and I know teams have to be aware of where he is and what he's doing on Sundays. But I think that this is a good place to be in. I'm talking about a guy like Judon, and not really going through training camp, and he's currently right now as we're recording this show, sack a game. I like that routine, and I feel like there are some things that I feel like as he continues to play, he's gonna do nothing but get better. And I definitely think that he's a guy that Chiefs offensive line, that specifically that left tackle, 15 need to be lined up over there. I don't think it need to be a secret. And because at the end of the day in the NFL, if you are not getting your stuff together, people see it on film, and they're going to line their guys up there and make sure they try to take advantage of that until you get better. If you don't, hey, look, you got to get replaced. And so I'm sure that they'll have some tape on Kingsley, and they'll have Mr. Wanye Boys the Men, his son. I ain't know his son played in the NFL. Stop anyway. But yeah, Mr. Morris, if he's not ready, he's gonna get that same type of treatment.
Yeah, I'll be curious because the Chiefs haven't really given either one of those guys help through 2 games, and I'll be curious if they decide to change that this week and sort of how that obviously impacts that matchup. But like, this to me is the reason why you went out and got Matthew Judon, because I remember, going back, I guess, over a month ago before they had made that trade, like, you look at this Chiefs team and you're like, look, if I talked about this all throughout the crossover with Chris Clark on Locked On Chiefs the other day. But like, if you can't get Patrick Mahomes on the ground, like, there's no real stopping him. I looked up the stats, like, he's completing 80% of his passes when he's not pressured, and it's just like, that's like, what are you doing? Like, you can't do anything, Like,
no response. That's freaking laughable.
I'm just curious, like, is the 20% that he's not completing, is it just people just dropping passes or whatever, like purely based off of that? So it's just like, there's no stopping if you can't get pressure. And before, like, circling this matchup, looking ahead to the season before the Judon trade, it was just like, the Chiefs' interior is really strong. That's the strength of their offensive line. They arguably have the best interior offensive line in football. We'll see if the Falcons can challenge them by the end of the season. But, and that's where the strength of the Falcons pass rush was. And so, like, they were going to potentially neutralize that. And so you were very worried about, okay, when you play the Chiefs, what are you going to be able to throw at Patrick Mahomes? Because you can't really blitz him because he's just going to carve that up. So it's just like, there's really nothing that you can do to challenge him, unless you believe that, Arnold Ebiketie and James Smith-Williams and Lorenzo Carter were going to terrorize, the Chiefs tackles. And, Jarvis, I don't feel ashamed to say I did not have those expectations for those guys, 6 weeks ago. And so that's why acquiring someone like a Matthew Judon is so important and so pivotal, because, like, in this specific matchup, if you wanted to have a chance to slow down this offense, you needed to have some pressure off of the edge where the Chiefs are weak, and will face other teams this season that their strength of their offensive line is on the interior, and the weaknesses, I think that's arguably the issue with the Saints right now. So if you want to slow down that offense, like, you got to go attack those tackles. So to me, this is kind of the game, that this is the reason why Matthew Judon is here. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what type of game he has. But we will continue.
One thing for it, because I think you make a great point as far as the Chiefs not giving help to their tackles. You just answered your own thought, right? Because when you have a quarterback who can completing 80% of his passes if teams don't blitz, which is not a fascinating concept when you're playing against him, 15 with Patrick Mahomes or whatever. So they have that luxury of not having to really. Of course, they're concerned about it, but when from a play call standpoint, he's getting the ball out quick, and we know that guys like Xavier Worthy, and being able to use those guys. I know Travis Kelce hasn't been involved or from a production standpoint that much like we're used to, but we've always had some issues when it comes to guarding tight end. So that is still another element that the Falcons are gonna have to be concerned about. And we know that Jimmy Lake is sticking to his guns when it comes to playing that zone scheme and stuff like that. So like Judon's going to have to get off. And I think that, when you have a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, like they don't necessarily have to give help to their attackers because they're getting the ball out so quickly. And if you're running that zones, he can carve your behind up so quickly. All the dude just got to do is just at least blow on him, and he'll be fine. He'll be able to get the ball off and not have to worry about getting put on the ground.
Yeah, that was definitely the case in the Baltimore game in Week 1 in that season opener, where Mahomes was just getting the ball out so quick that it didn't matter that Suamataia was getting beat pretty much every play by Ojabo and Odafe Owe and all those guys because the ball was coming out quickly. So that's going to be a challenge for the guys on the back end to hold up long enough so that Mahomes won't be able to do that, and that will allow guys like Judon to get home. And on that note, that's a perfect segue. Talking about covering tight ends. Well, since we have Jarvis here, we're going to talk about Troy Andersen, of course, but we'll start off the conversation before we get there. We got to talk about, AJ Terrell and how well he played against the Eagles. And why doesn't he get enough credit for when he plays well? He only seems to get credit when he plays poorly. And we'll break that down to wrap up today's Locked On Falcons. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members because it's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. And unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you versus the numbers. Just pick more or less on up to 6 player stat projections, and you can watch the winnings roll in. And if you're looking to get into action because certain sports books aren't available in your state, don't worry, PrizePicks is. And withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. You can get your money in as quickly as 15 minutes. And so, do you want to continue to ride the hot hand and go more on Bijan Robinson's projections? Or do you feel like, hey, this is a big week for Kyle Pitts? Go find out by checking out PrizePicks, by downloading the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL, and you'll get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. So here with Jarvis Davis wrapping up today's Locked On Falcons. Make sure you tune in to Locked On Falcons on Sunday evening, probably around midnight, for our rapid reaction. Of course, Jarvis and I will be reacting to whatever happens Sunday night a little bit earlier than that, immediately after that final whistle on Locked On Sports Atlanta, along with Tenitra Batiste. So make sure you subscribe to both channels so that you can get your immediate post-game reactions here on the Locked On Podcast Network. But Jarvis, let's talk a little bit about AJ Terrell. I know you wanted to kind of highlight a solid performance from AJ Terrell against the Philadelphia Eagles after a underwhelming performance, I guess you could say, a disappointing performance in Week 1 against the Steelers. But what are your thoughts on AJ Terrell not necessarily getting maybe the love that you think he sometimes deserves?
I mean, because I feel like people's thoughts on who he is as a player is kind of like a mixed bag. And a lot of times I feel like I defend AJ Terrell a lot, and it's not like I'm saying he's this all worldly type corner. I'm just saying he's a pretty doggone good corner, and you don't let pretty doggone good corners walk out the door. You pay them. That's just how it works. Not to say that they're up there with the quarterbacks, but they are very important. It's quarterbacks, left tackles, edge. Matter of fact, flip that. quarterbacks, edge, left tackle, then corner. That's just from an order of importance in this league, especially in today's league, because you got to have have multiple guys that are pretty doggone good at playing that corner spot to be able to survive in today's NFL. So for me, I feel like when I'm saying he's a solid cornerback, he's a pretty good doggone quarterback, I get pushback and like, oh, he's a bum. Like, no, he's not a bum. I just don't understand it. And then when you go to the game on Monday, like when he was there in coverage, he was there. You didn't see him getting beat like crazy. You saw him, even if the dude catch the ball on him, he's putting them down right there where he caught the football. And that's all you can ask as from a cornerback standpoint. We know I've come to the conclusion that he's not going to necessarily get you a whole bunch of interceptions. Like we need to, everybody needs to come to that conclusion saying, hey, he's just not that type of guy at corner. So, but he is a guy that's going to be there in coverage. He might have a game where the guy gets the best of him. Every corner does. Every corner has that game. There's no such thing as lockdown corners in today's NFL. You can forget about it. You can't put your hands on people like you used to be able to do back in the day. So I think people just need to update their thoughts on AJ Terrell. Like lower those, oh, he's a lockdown corner. No, man, ain't no such thing. Ain't nobody a lockdown corner in NFL today. And you can make a case all you want to, but it'll be very hard to change my mind. So, and I think that, when he put these performances out there like that, you need to give him man some credit.
It really just boils out, like, appreciate the player for what he is, rather than hammering for what he's not. And, I need a reminder of that on occasion, but, a player that I really appreciate is Troy Andersen, Jarvis. So yeah. I know. Troy did not have the world's greatest game on Monday Night Football. I don't really think any of the linebackers had the world's greatest game because I saw,
he's not alone.
I saw Caden Ellis getting road graded by a couple of guys, getting pancaked by a couple of guys. But I think the difference is Caden Ellis. We've seen a body of work with Caden Ellis, so we know, okay,
yes,
we're not going to hold this.
It's an aberration. Yeah,
this is not the norm for Caden Ellis. Unfortunately, which is the crux of our disagreement with Troy Andersen is. I call him Croy. I wonder where I'm going.
Please don't do that. Oh gosh, I don't feel like that way about him. I hope I don't either.
But I think that's the crux of the Troy Andersen issue, which is he doesn't have that body of work, and so you're looking at games like he had on Monday night as this is what defines him at this point in time. But Jarvis, this is the chance for you to be, I don't know if it's a victory lap or whatever you want to say. I'll give you the floor to talk about Troy Andersen on the Locked On.
I'm not going to run a victory lap. I might power walk it, you know what I'm saying? Because I got to get back in shape. You know what I'm saying? I can't run victory laps right now. Okay. I'm just not in that space. So, I'm about to power walk this thing. So, here's the thing, man. In all seriousness, I feel like this is why I mourned the loss of Nate Landman, the Landman. When he went to IR, I was devastated. I was like, hey, man, that's the thumper. Caden Ellis is, he has his moments. We saw he was really good last year, in my humble opinion. And that's my expectation that's set for him because he put that production out there, And like you said, he didn't have that, right? And then you take Nate Landman out of the fold, which is a guy who he gonna come downhill, what to expect. First and second down, they run that ball, man. 53 gonna be somewhere to be found, and it might be in your backfield. So I think that I saw the loss of that. Like that's why I feel Caden Ellis can't afford to have another letdown or just a lax game, or hopefully it is an aberration because you mentioned Travis Kelce, man, on Sunday Night Football prime time. Pat need to find his boy. Like, hey, man, we can probably take advantage of these second-level defenders because look at the game that they had against the Eagles. I'm talking about broken tackles. 44 was out there, Saquon Barkley. Oh, he got happy to see 4-4, when it was him in the hole. Like, you just saw 44 falling and looking around. Oh, man, oh, shoot, where 26 go? Like, no. Hey, man, like, just say, what I saw on tape last week, not last week, but Monday against the Philadelphia Eagles, 44 will have to get it fixed, because if he doesn't, Falcons might be in trouble. Because, like I said, Travis Kelce, he's part of the media. You know, I know he's still playing, but he's part of it. He hears it. He hears all the conversation. Oh, Travis Kelce ain't doing anything, blah, blah, blah. I'm telling you, Sunday night is a prime stage. We saw the type of game he had in the Super Bowl with 11 catches, whatever, 10, 11 catches, man, just going off. We understand what he can do. You don't want it to be on you. 44 and 55. I'm going to add him in there too. Hey, man, yeah, better get your life together, because 87 coming, man.
Yeah.
We know 15 going to be there too. You know what's coming. You can't be surprised when you know what's coming.
Yeah, so I think these next couple of games are going to be real important for Troy Andersen and his development, some of the challenges that he'll face. You got Alvin Kamara the following week after that. So there's going to be some challenges. So it's sink or swim time for Troy Andersen, and we'll see, who's doing the victory laps here on the Locked On Falcons podcast in the future. But we'll just save that for the future, guys, and we will be back on Sunday evening to give you a recap of this game. Make sure you check out Locked On Sports Atlanta as well as Locked On Falcons. Check out Locked On NFL as part of your daily listenership here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every